I'm guilty of working a lot of hours, but trying to make sure that the grandchildren are around as well, and always showing them something, teaching them something, saying, you know what, let me take the grandchildren, let's go here, and just from young, so that they're used to being around grandma, grandpa, or whatever your name is for the children. But it's really important that within our families that we start to, show that example and be that example. Because what will happen is if we carry on like maybe the generation before was, I was working, we don't have time, or I was working, let me give you to grandma. That's the examples that we need to really instill and really do. Because if not, we're just going to be like the westernized society or the Canaanites, where they just dash their parents when they get to a certain age. They don't look back. A lot of their parents are in homes. So we have to break that pattern. We have to make sure that we're not following that mold, because we're already in like most of our people in such a bad state. We have to correct. And in order to correct, we've got to stop following those people who don't even care about their parents, have no culture, nothing. We've got to go back to who we were. I think you mentioned Sankofa, or it was mentioned Sankofa earlier. We've got to be able to put that back into our families in order for those things to be passed down from old to new, or else they're just going to go to school, they're going to have their friends, they're going to have these people with no culture, no lawlessness, and that's what they're going to pass on to their children. That's, let's forget it. After that, it's going to be hard to get them back.
Okay, there's a part B to that. With regard to the spirituality, I know growing up, Sundays was church, strict church. My mother, the only way you did not go to church if you were on your bed dying. That's it. But you had to go to church. We notice now today it is the kids, especially the children get a certain age, they decide whether or not they go to church. They decide whether or not they participate. And the parents, like Paul Uncle said, they seem afraid of the children, or they don't want to assert their authority to engage their children in church. Tell me how you would advise a parent with regard to their children and church. Is it a matter of there's nothing in church for that child? The child doesn't see the need to go to church, they're not engaged, or it's the preaching or the teaching? How would you advise that parent if they want to encourage their child to come back to church or to visit church? Not the name itself.
I, for one, would advise any parent to first and foremost verify if what you're taking your children to makes sense, right? Because children today, we live in the information age, and if they're inquisitive enough, they can do research on their own, and they recognize that a lot of the things that the generations before them accepted as truth, right? Biblical truth versus actual reality. When I say biblical truth, I mean what the Canaanite, what the European, what the Greco-Romans have given us and beaten into us as truth that we just accept without blind faith, right? When the children begin to realize that there's more to spirituality, there's more to religion, there's more to our way of life than what we've been given in the traditional church. They can rebel, right? They can actually, I was one of those children. I was one of those children. I rebelled. I mean, fortunately, I had parents who, and I did it after I was 18, right? I wasn't a child. I was 18. I said to my father, listen, I really don't feel like going to church. And he said, well, you're 18 now. So you don't have to. I would still go if my grandmother asked me to come, or if they, certain Sundays I would come. Yeah, but I was 18. So he said, okay, if you're not gonna go, then that's when the discussion began. I need to know the why. And so I was still young in my development and growth and just reading. So I didn't have a lot of the answers, but it made me study. It made me want to learn more. because I had to defend why I didn't want to go to this particular church. I just started out with nobody in the stained glass window looked like me. Right?
Regard to that.
Yeah.
When you started searching and you were talking to your father, what did he say, or what did you ask in terms of what your grandparents, great-grandparents, because I know your great-grandfather founded
Church of God.
the Church of God here.
Yes, yes.
What did he say in terms of that to say change your mind or encourage you to go a different direction other than the normal straightened out church that we see today?
Well, my father, we would have these dynamic debates in the house. And there were things that I would present to him based on what I was studying. He would say, I always believe some of the stuff that you're saying. I just never had any way to prove it, right? And so he didn't really try to force me into the traditional church because he knew there weren't any, and nobody in the stained glass window looked like us. Couldn't fight that. It was boring. Couldn't fight that. Right? I was in the Presbyterian church, right? But he just wanted to make sure that my moral compass wasn't being skewed. He's like, well, we have some morals in this house that, he would say are bigger than church. That's how I knew it wasn't just about church.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? That obviously had been passed down from his parents and great grandparents. So that moral ethical code was still in place even outside of the church.
Right.
So that's what he focused on, making sure that I stayed glued to, you understand? And so ultimately, it turned into where I found the Holy Coptic Church, and I mean, long story short, he became a member of the Holy Coptic Church. Thankfully so. So ultimately, we always maintained the respect, even in our debates. My mother the same way. We would have our discussions, and but they knew something was up. We didn't have the fear that they had. You see? Sorry, Colin, definitely. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. You're good. Go on, Uncle. I would say, the question, what would you advise a parent who wants to bring their child back to church? First of all, how old is that child? If you're talking about like 18 or so forth, you're going to have a little bit of a struggle there. Unless they show an interest. If they show an interest, then you've got to jump on that interest and try expand it. If they're younger, we've got to do it in a way that we're bringing these stories, we're bringing this, the things that we're learning, we've got to bring it to the children in a childlike way. And I find that, because I also assist with the Sunday school here, and I find that sometimes when bringing information, stories, biblical stories, quotes over to children, sometimes it's almost like we're not really talking to the child. We're not making it fun. We're not making it interesting. So I always say to anyone who's assisting us in the Sunday school, look, make it interesting. If you as a child, how would you like this to be brought over to you? What would you think would be a fun way? It's all good reading from a book and Abraham did this and blah, blah, blah. And when you look 20 minutes down the line, the children are sitting as if they want to fall asleep, they want to walk, they're looking at the wall, they're looking everywhere, they're just not interested. So you've got to make it interesting. You've got to bring it in a childlike way. So I always try to if we're working, like, say, for example, we're working with the elements and how the elements are in us. And, we say, you know what, this week we're going to cook. Next week, we're going to actually make something. And you're using the elements and you're showing, look, we're using heat, we're using fire, we're using the sand, and growing things. So always make it interesting. How does this relate to us? And then we take those things and say, look, it's here in the Bible, and this is what they did, and blah. And you bring about a sort of what we'll call organized play, but they're not playing. It's actually serious, and they're learning from it. And then you get engaging conversation, and then once you can see engagement, then you can actually pull them towards you, or you can pull them in and then start you know, creating programs. The thing about it is we expect the children, and I did. We had to sit there next to our mum and just keep quiet for 2 hours. You know, when it came to
Yes.
clapping, you clapped. You just sat there. You didn't say a word. You didn't say nothing.
Yeah.
Or else, you know, you're gonna get a pinch or a slap or something. You know, sit there and keep quiet for the time when the pastor's speaking. But now we have children be like, this is boring. Just sit there and keep
Yeah.
quiet and tell what you learned afterwards. But you know, so we try and engage the children into our stories a little bit more. So that's what I would advise anybody, you know, with young children, like, oh, they don't want to come, they just want to run up and down. First of all, there's no running up and down. Let's learn discipline. We're going to sit down here. And then secondly, like, okay, what else can we do with the children? So, you know, try to get them engagement. Even if you don't have that at church, when you get home, create that at home, you know, and just create that atmosphere, environment for them. These are Bible stories. These are pictures. Let's draw a picture together. Let's do something to engage that child in childlike mind. Because we're adults now, but let's not forget we were children once, so we know what we enjoy.
Thank you. They talked a lot about the return, the African return, the great return to Ghana. We're going back home. There's a lot of, like Dr. Marimba Ani had said, our culture is our immune system. Dr. Amos Wilson quoted, our culture does not exist outside our minds or our bodies. He also went on to say the kind of world you live in reflects the kind of world you create. Now, you're Bahamian, Cowan Tefnut is of Jamaican origin, so far as we, besides Africa.
Yeah, right.
What is Black culture from where we are, the Bahamas? You're from Jamaica, but you live in London, you grew up in London. What would you consider Black culture there and the symbolisms for Black culture?
All right, so
Go ahead.
Black culture, coming from Jamaica to London and reconnecting back to the, you know, the fatherland, the motherland, would be our dress. You know, our culture is in our dress and, you know, materials, you know, we like to look good. So, you know, looking at African materials, especially kente. Kente is so famous. Everyone's wearing kente cloth, but I may not know what it is, but that's like a kind of reconnection. You know, the food. So Black culture is primarily, let's get him back to the type of food. Now, I don't mean the type of food that was given to us that's now destructive to our bodies, but the type of food that we would have ate. We would have, you know, seasonal food. Black culture is about what that culture or traditions that was passed down that maybe like in some Rastafarian cultures, and I don't mean they would have different Rastafarian groups, and we don't mean the commercial Rastafarian. We mean those who really lived off the land, because they would have said, okay, this is how we did it. This is how we passed down. You know, like things like how we cooked, what we cooked, when we cooked it, how we dressed, the kind of clothes that we wore. Things that we said, like, you know, before you ate your food, you know, we would say a prayer or supplication, you know, and just how we treated each other, our parents, our elders, the respect that we had, that was all a part of the culture. So it's about, what does that look like today? It's about reinstilling that culture. It's about making sure that's in our church, our household, amongst our friends and family, and holding on to that. So, you know, today, like my family, not a lot of people want to wear African clothes. I'm like, they're one of the few. They're starting to, you know, embrace it a little bit now, but not so much. And, you know, I remember when one of my children, when we were younger, we went somewhere and there was literally hardly anyone wearing any type of African material clothing. And I can't remember which one of my children it was that we took out to them. And they said, why do you have to wear that? You know, nobody else is wearing that. Why do you have to be that one? Why do you have to be with me wearing that? And they felt embarrassed by it, you know? So I'm like, and I had to show them, this is our culture. This is who we are, you know, that, you know, and I took them back and, you know, after that day, obviously they didn't see it that day because they thought, oh my God, everyone's staring at us. Everyone's looking at you. And I said, yes, because they've seen how beautiful the material is, so teaching that culture and holding on to those traditions, primarily now as what we see, or I see as, we see as the Holy Coptic Church of Black Messiahs, is our culture, is those things that were passed down and still living those type of things that passed down from grandparents to ancestors and so on, and keeping that tradition. We don't really cook, Irish potatoes all the time. So, but now most of us cooking Irish potatoes. It's not our culture. It's not our culture to get up in the morning, don't wash yourself and get out. Cleanliness has always been taught as next to godliness. So it's part of our culture. So those are just some of the things that we look what it looks like today. It's going back and living that and actually showing that example. This is what we do. This is how we do it. You know what I mean? Certain times of the year, the whole house get clean. Well, I know every weekend I had to do the skirting boards. Oh, I didn't like it. But every Saturday, that was my job. So, like, come on, how it was to keep the house clean. And not just because you were keeping it clean of dust and dirt, because we knew that there were certain parasitic viruses and things in that. You kept that house clean. And so, yeah, that's like part of our culture that we don't really do so much today, but that's what we should incorporate.
So in the Bahamas, in many instances, we have people who want to reaffirm their Bahamianness as opposed to their Africanness, right?
That's not right.
They're trying their best. It's funny because when, for example, we have a form of dashiki here in the Bahamas, we call androsia print, right? It's a type of what's the formal term that they use for it? It's batik. Yeah, it's a batik. You're coloring the cloth and even wax where you don't want the color, and that creates the images that you want. And Chankanu, our one of our major cultural expressions, the drums, the cowbells, the costuming, right? There are people who will fight you down, right? And tell you that that is Bahamian only. Yet, we have now been able to see in a place called Princess Town in Ghana, where they have the same exact festival, literally same costuming, almost the same type of music, right? The drums that we're utilizing, African drums, goat skin drums, right? And so even up to this week, Monday, last week, Monday, this week, they had the Anglican Church had their synod. It was broadcast on a national station. And I looked at the garb of the priest, and he had the mitre on, which is the fish head about a sarum, and he had the staff or the crook, and then he even sat in the same. When you look on they call the Osarian drama scene or judgment scene, the area that Asaru sits in with the two women, the Mertai behind him, all of that was in this service that they had on Monday, right? So there's so many remnants of our Africanness or our Blackness, if someone would call it that, but we don't recognize it as being Black. We may just see it as Bahamian because there's a knowledge gap. There's ignorance that still rules, that tells us that we're not really African and that we really need to just focus on being Bahamian, right? When in fact, there are Greek Bahamians, yes? There are American Bahamians. There are Haitian Bahamians. There you have Bahamians who are coming from all over the world who are calling themselves Bahamian, which is a beautiful thing. But then we, in many instances, as African Bahamians, we don't want to make the link to Africa. And even the foods, right? I've heard of people who've gone back to Ghana or West Africa, and they're eating, and they're like, this tastes like my grandmother's soup. This tastes like my mother's fish, right? So the realities are still there. We just have to now begin to make the associations with what we have been doing, for the past 10 generations or however long, and begin to see that, oh, this is really an African dish. This is really an African style of dress. This is really an African expression of liberation, John Canoe. And that's our job, to continue to share these types of programming with our people so that they understand, oh, like, hold on, I'm proud to be Bahamian, but the Bahamas is the fruit. Africa is the root.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. A part of the remembrance, a part of the symbols and the rituals is giving your child wisdom, knowledge, and a sense of what happened before the past, and also how to recognize what's going on now. It seems as if with what's going on in the world, you're looking in London, France, Italy, the United States, it's become more aggressive towards Black people everywhere. And they don't care, male, female, how old you are, they're attacking. Right now, there are 60,000+ Black females missing. Last, I think it was, no, Monday, they found another Black girl body in Houston out of a swamp. She would be the 10th body that they have found. No one's talking about it. No one's saying anything. You have children who are being found hung on college campuses. Black children missing, or you would see them hanging everywhere. Part of our remembrance is to teach our children about the past. It seems as if we're not educating our children about what's going on. The threat, it's a real threat, but we seem to be in a state of denial that it's coming back. What can we do, or what is it that happened that we are ignoring? Most of us, I would say, we're ignoring what's happening, and the fact that we know, we have the history, we know that this has occurred before, but we're not protecting our children. In the Bahamas, I kept asking children, I have a nephew who is off in college. Have you gotten anything from the Bahamian government with regard to warnings and what you should do because of the stuff that happened on campus? He goes to a Black college. After the young man got killed,
Right.
there were threats against Black colleges.
Yeah.
He said no. What can we do, or what as a collective, not just individual, with regard to our children and letting them know this is what's happening, this is what happened before. You have to learn the signs so that you can take care of yourself and be safe.
I'll definitely start.
No, my brother, if you can start with that, because I know that you're educational wise.
That's
So.
what I need to do.
Count Chaplain, can you hear us?
Yep. Colin, Uncle, do you mind going first?
Go first.
Oh, okay, I'll go first. Am I being heard? Okay. I would say what we need to do is follow scripture. Book of Revelation, chapter 18, around verses 3 and 4 says, "Come out of her, that you be not partakers of her iniquity, that you be not partakers of her plague, her iniquities," right? If we continue to try to live in the lands that were never built for us in the first place, we are going to meet the same fate that our ancestors met when they were brought to build these lands for the people who didn't want them here in the first place. We have to support those who are building a land in our that we need to support and make sure that we are preparing to be able to go to these lands when times, we're already at the point where times are beyond repair, right? But we cannot expect to remain in these lands and have things just miraculously change. That's just not going to happen. We're seeing, like you said, amongst the European nations, amongst the United States, the hate, the disdain towards people of African descent, Nubian Melanoites, Black people. And the question that I'm always asking is how much abuse do we need to take before we decide, let's just take everything. That's what the book of Genesis chapter 15, Genesis 15, around verse 13, it talks about Abraham's seed being a stranger in the land for 400 years and then coming out of that oppression with themselves and going to their fathers in a good old age. Those scriptures are what we need to be pointing out to those who have an ear to hear. Because if we are willing to take the opportunity to visit first our African countries, there are people that are waiting to assist us with relocating or creating what our Basesh, Rev. Dr. A.J. Obama has said to us, this aliyah, this ability to have dual citizenship, come back and forth between the Bahamas and Africa, or Jamaica and Africa, or Trinidad and Africa, until we get to the point where we have things in order and we can, by example, we can say, hey, I'm over here, things are nice, schools are up, we're putting schools up, we have businesses up, so that they don't have to lean on the false narrative that they've given us about Africa, and starving children and flies and wars and all these different things. We can then say, no, I'm here. We can turn on the camera. We can show them, hey, this is my house. This is where I work. This is our park. This is our school. And they go, wow, really? That's nice. I'll come visit. And then it just continues to build like that. But we got to get out, ultimately. That's what I think.
I would say that here at the Holy Coptic Church of the Black Messiah, we're teaching our children, we're teaching each other. We've got to primarily, again, I agree exactly what Khan Uncle said, we've got to come out of her. So if we have children that's going to go out in the world to these universities, to these educational institutions, to these schools, we have to prepare them. We have to create links that when they grow in a strong community. So they know primarily here is where we're learning first. We're learning how to deal with those out there. We're learning not to get caught up out there and always keep that connection with them. Isaiah 46 says, you know what, remember the things of old. Remember those things, because it's those things of old that's going to keep you. Do you understand? We've got to reconnect. We've got to never forget, which is what African Holocaust Month is all about. Every week we've spoken, and you have different speakers that's come out, because we are creating that environment for us, those who are members who are here. We're having children and babies are being born all the time. So we have to create communities. Now, even if people are like, okay, I like what you're saying, I like what you do, but we're here for now. But guess what? While you're there for now, know that they will come and they will attack, because that's exactly what they're doing. And you've given, Sister Shan, you've given examples of that. Now, if we want to protect, then we have to set up communities where our children are protected, where we are protected. How long are we going to stand there looking at YouTube, looking at these social media platforms, saying, oh, here goes another one, here goes another one. And then when it comes to our door, okay, now we're going to do something about it. No, 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 no. Before it happens, while the baby, as soon as the baby comes out the womb, we are talking to that child. As soon as the child is growing up to overstand, we are talking, we are setting that up, perimeters, and we're making our links, because this is what's happening. They are coming. And they're coming in their thousands and their hundreds, and they're going back to who they are and what they are. In fact, they never left who they were and who they are. They've always been murderers and killers, and that's what they've been doing throughout the world. And we have to teach our children this is who they are. You know, it's not about, oh, we can't teach this because we might get. No, no, no. This is the truth. It's even in their books. This is who they are. They talk about how they pillage, how they rape, how they took over land. It's in their books. So we will take their books and show them this is who the people that you're dealing with. Because, you know, in society, not society, sorry, in nature, there is nothing, no beast, being, or animal, mammal, whatever you want to name it, learns that this crocodile, this lion, this predator kills. We learn from the fact that this is a predator and they will kill our children. They will take our eggs. They will take our babies. And then we have babies and say, well, here, educate my child. So that child is going out there and don't know that that is a predator. They are a killer. They are a murderer. This is what they do. They cannot help themselves. That is their nature. So we have to wise them up and make them strong, have a strong foundation to know that you're there, but you're only there to learn. I tell my son every day when he goes to school, he don't like school. I says, you're not there to make friends. It's you are there for a moment in time. That moment in time will pass. And I'll tell him every day who they are. This is the game they play. Look out for it. Don't get suckered. So we have to make sure we're telling that to all our children. Because there is no, like I said, there is no deer. There is no moose that says, okay, lion, here you go. Take my child, bring him back 5 hours later and hope to see that child again in the same way. It's never gonna happen. So as when they go out in this world, we've got to prepare them, and we've got to make sure mentally they're not connecting with them, but they're connecting with us, you know, which is why we of the Holy Coptic Church of the Black Messiah says the Black Messiah, because the Black Messiah is the one that's here. This is your savior, not them. And we will show them throughout years of history, this is what they've done. This is what they will always do. And that's why it says, remember the times of old, because this is the game they play. As soon as you see them say one thing about character assassination, Bill Cosby, you know what's coming next. Sex. It's always sex. They always link sex. Oh, he had sex with this child, this person, or he had, and it's always one of the black icons. They try to tear them down. Oh, Malcolm X was secretly gay. Sex. An Honorable Elijah Muhammad had many wives. Sex. It's always about sex because that's who they are. That's where they come from. They cannot help it. So we have to make sure we label them, identify who they are, set up strong communities. And if you're not going to be a part of the Holy Coptic Church of the Black Messiah, make sure you set up a strong community that when you put your child out there, you don't come crying 5 years later that your child is now shooting up a school. It wasn't him. He's a good boy. He's this. No, you allowed his mind to become corrupt. You allowed his mind to be taken over by that spirit. That's who we have to make sure we defend our children with all the time. Don't ease up, never ease up, because they never do. They never ease up, which is why they can feel bold and blatant enough to come and take our children, murder them, hang them, do whatever they want, rape them. They can feel bold enough to do that while we sit and say, okay, all right, what do we do now? No, what do we do now? Defend your own, stand up, and don't be afraid to speak out. They don't. Look at them now. You understand? So we got to make sure that we're protecting our own. We're no more. We will remember. Right. So this month is about remembering never to forget, and don't ever be afraid to speak for yours and your own. That's what we do here.
That's right.
Thank you. That should have been the final. I have one more question that ties into this. Now, our topic was the role of symbols and rituals and remembrance. I had started with Proverbs 13:22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children. Children speaks of legacy of wealth. We seem to think, I've seen it in many families, the idea that since we struggled, our children have to struggle. We get to this point, but they don't start at this point, they start at the bottom. We put them out of school. We don't help them to finance businesses. Some we don't send to school. Whereas in other cultures, all efforts to obtain as much as they can for their children, they do. They use nepotism with no shame. With regard to LeBron James and his son going to the Lakers, he used nepotism. I don't blame him. That's his child. The criticism he got was majority was Black people who thought that the son should have struggled instead of built upon what his father had done. Why is this the mindset of most Nubian Melaninite people? And how do we correct this so that we get wealth and we leave generational wealth for our children's children so that we can come out with great substance and go back home?
Mm.
Well, a lot of our people are still suffering from ignorance. The problem is it's not labeled as ignorance. It's labeled as education. It's labeled as religion. It's labeled as news, et cetera, et cetera. And so we pick up these ways, you call it, culturalist ways, from societies that were designed to literally keep our way of thinking the way it is so that we will never ever come out of this situation that we're in, right? What must happen is the book of Exodus chapter 4. If you have an opportunity and you haven't read it closely, just take the time to read Exodus 4. Exodus chapter 3, Moses, he meets this burning bush and he's told to go and tell the children of Israel, that the great I am said thus and thus. But Exodus chapter 4, Moses is saying, yeah, but they ain't gonna believe me. And this is how many of us feel, right? We feel like people aren't gonna believe us when we say what we have to say. And long story short, Moses is told that, hey, Aaron is gonna speak on your behalf. And you got to show these people the signs that I have shown you, and you have to teach them the words that I've taught you. In the 31st verse of Exodus chapter 4, it says that they not only didn't talk just about signs, that it brought the signs to the sight of the people, right? We have to show those who are in our immediate reach that this is how we're raising and grooming our children, like LeBron James did. LeBron James didn't care who said what they had to say. You understand? He just did what he needed to do. He put his son in the position that he needed to put him in, and he didn't have much to say about it. We have to do the same thing. When the King of England, as he is now, became the King of England, I'm not sure if he really moved out of the house before he became the king. Okay, so the royalty, they understand this. They don't move out.
No, and gave him up.
Right, and gave him a house, right? So this idea of what we're supposed to be doing with our children needs to now focus on what we originally did as a people and making sure that we're buying land that all of us can live on, where we can all really be a community, you understand? And we can all grow off of the benefits, whatever the children have learned, whatever the adults have learned, whatever the community has learned, we're all benefiting from it and utilizing it to grow from strength to strength. But if we stay in this environment, if we don't come out, Revelation 18, come out of it. We don't come out, we're gonna be kept, they're gonna keep feeding us ignorance. They're not gonna call it ignorance. They're gonna say education, but it's really ignorance. They're gonna say religion, but it's really ignorance. They're gonna say news, but it's really ignorance. I can go on and on. They really just feed you a pile of ignorance. And if we keep ingesting it, digesting it, allowing it to fester, we will keep starting over in each generation while they continue to build heaven on earth for them, which becomes hell on earth for us.
Helen Tefnit?
Sorry. Okay, so yeah, we somehow think that um, by our children having to struggle like what we did, they would be more appreciative. It's a lesson you're wasting time because and let me go to one of the companies I used to work for, one of the corporate companies I used to work for, the one of the owners, because he wanted his children and grandchildren to learn the business so that one day they would take over. He didn't say, okay, well, you're going to start from the basic bottom and get the bottom rate and then work your way up. No, no, no. They had the privilege of what he had already done. And he said, go in the company and learn the company. So they didn't come in and sit beside the lowest, person on the list. No, they just came in, learned the business, worked in the office, worked in the field, saw what it was like, went out, and then, but they still did all of that while being on their privileged house and cars and still incorporated that. So the lesson there is you can appreciate, your children can appreciate, but when are you teaching them that? They don't have to struggle because it's like every year, every generation, you want to start again. We could be so much further ahead, but you want to go back there so they can. No. And let me give you another example. There was an Italian professor, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. And what he did was he said, when you go out shopping and you see these children throwing these big tantrums, like throwing themselves all over the floor and doing all that, and the mother's trying to control them in there and saying, don't do that, don't do that, because she's a little bit embarrassed. Oh, you trying to control the child or trying to control that behavior now while it's out? But what was you doing in the home? It's already too late. Now you're here, you're out. Now everybody sees you haven't been doing it because can't be the first time this child is doing this. So
Right.
the lesson there is, well, if you're only going to teach your child from that point on, well, no, they're definitely not going to appreciate it, and no, they're not going to understand it. So you've got to, it all starts from the home. So they can live in your house if you've worked hard for your things and you have things to show for it, you have a nice big house, you have cars, they can enjoy those things. But at the same time, it's what lessons are you instilling while they're living that life? What are you doing? So ultimately, it's like, okay, yeah, let's see what this is our business, working our business. You're not going to get the 100 grand wage. No, you're going to get a less wage because you're going to learn the business. But you're not starting from the beginning where I started from. I've already done that for you. Now you're going to learn from here how to manage it. You're going to learn finance. You're going to learn business. You're going to learn all the different aspects that need to be learned in whatever field it may be. Whether you're a lecturer, a professor, a teacher, a business person, a farmer, whatever that is. So your child can enjoy life, but at the same time, you're going to teach them from young. This is what we do. When farmers go out, farmers don't say, okay, I've got all of this acres of land and, just live off the land and watch me. No, your child is getting up the child or the family, whoever it is getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning. Let's go out. You're going to, you're planting the seeds. So the child is learning while still living there. So that's lessons that we have to incorporate. So we've got to kind of let go of this mentality of, oh, they need to struggle like me. Why do they need to struggle? You don't see nobody else who's got wealth struggling. Why are we doing that? We've got to stop following that narrative. That's not our narrative. It never was that narrative. Stop doing that. So we've got to, put everybody else's narrative aside and just learn lessons for ourselves. And that's what shows you that person, adult, parent, whoever it is, they have lessons to learn themselves before they can teach a child. Because obviously you don't know. This is why you doing that. So,
Yes.
we think that we have life experiences. You have life experience like you've gone from 1 to 20, 30, whatever it may be, but you obviously are still living in, as Cole and Uncle said, in a state of ignorance. So come on, as people, when are we going to get better? You're always going to be at that same stage because, you're always going to be giving your child, take the lift from 1. No, take the lift from 10, let's go. You know what I'm saying? This is how it works. So yeah, we have to kind of re-educate ourselves as well, or those people, in order for then our children can go leap bound from the next level and then get further. And every generation will get further and further ahead.
Yes, Pastor Baton. Thank you.
Amen.
Now I'm going to end with one thing. Give me I would say a verse, could be a Bible scripture, a saying that keeps you in remembrance and also pushes you ahead.
Mm.
The verse that comes to mind, without me thinking about it, is the book of Jude, the 14th verse. It talks about the 10,000 strong, right? I feel that that verse is important for me because when we gather, we become the sign of strength that our people need to see. More than anything that we can say, we can come together, we can show our strength by wearing our garbs, by saying the mosque. I say the mosque too loud in the food store wherever I go. Like, hey, the mosque too. Like, what's that, right? I'm proud to be an Atonist, right? The more we gather and we show our strength, we can become that which people trust to lean on. Because they don't trust much in this world today. But if they see us gathering in our strength, they'll find the trust.
Mm. Okay. For me, it's I would say in the book of Numbers, Numbers 11, I believe, Numbers 11, where it talks about, and I love this because it strengthens me all the time when I read it, and then when I say it, where it talks about the people speaking one language. You know, if you get on that and you speak one language, you know, and it says nothing, you know, and I always emphasize that word, nothing will ever be held from you, from your mind, that you can think of. So basically, you know, when the people speak one language, when they put one tongue, nothing can be held from you which you have in mind. So whatever we think of, we will do, and nothing will be held from you. And for me, that keeps us going because, you know, and keeps punching and keep pushing. Because if we can speak one language and one tongue and be on that same one mind, all focus on the same way, whatever we think of, we will achieve, and nothing will be held from us that we think to do.
Amen.
Amen.
One God, one aim, one destiny.
I know. Mm-hmm.
And with that, we close out